Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Krista Moore Show. This show is brought to you as a way for me to inspire my audience on different ways that they can continue to rediscover their purpose and their passion so they can soar in their life, their relationships, and their career. My next guest, coincidentally, I just met a couple of days ago, and as I was having just a general conversation with her, I realized that she actually has rediscovered what her purpose and her passion is. So I want to introduce to you today Lindsy Lassere, and she is a former teacher and now turned financial advisor. So she's going to be sharing with us her story, and I get to know her along the way. Hi, Lindsy. How are you?
Hi, thank you. I'm great, Krista. Thank you for having me.
Great. So we just spoke briefly the other day, and I just kind of felt this connection where I wanted to hear more about how you made that transition, because so many people, want to just forget this job, and they know they're not living their best self, and there's something more out there for them, or they just are afraid to make that shift. So I
Yeah.
wanted to hear from you. So why don't you kind of just tell us a little bit about your story? So who is Lindsy, and former teacher, now financial advisor?
That's right. Yeah, I wear a lot of hats. I'm a teacher, I'm a mom, I'm a dog mom, I'm a military spouse, a daughter, a sister, friend, colleague. So it's been a long way, but something sparked in my brain when you said afraid. So it's almost been 5 years since my mom passed away. She was from the time of her diagnosis with cancer to the date that she passed was about 3 months. It was a very quick whirlwind. And the way I manifested that grief was through fear. I was afraid to do anything that would basically, upset things. It was such a turbulent year and time in my life that I wanted everything to keep, on an even keel. And I can only say that now. I could not voice that in 2016 at all. But I was in a teaching role. I had been a teacher since 2000. And as a military spouse, I have taught almost every grade except first. And I think there's another one in there somewhere, but
Yeah, I was going to ask you what grade you were teaching, because I just know a little bit about that. My daughter is a teacher, and she's taught a lot of the elementary grades, and they're all very different.
Oh, yeah. The very first grade I taught was fifth, and that's the very last grade I taught. In between, there were some high school courses I did, some middle school. I spent 3 years as a kindergarten teacher. But as a military spouse, when I would move to a place, they would say, "Oh, great, you're a teacher. You have all these certifications," because I would collect them along the way. They're like, "We have kindergarten," or "We have third," or I wasn't really in a position to say no. So
when your mother passed, were you a school teacher at that time?
I was. Yep, I was in fifth grade at a great school, great team I was on. And I kind of really pulled in after my mom passed into that cocoon of fear that nothing should, I didn't want to upset anything. I wanted to keep everything nice and even, basically not feel is what I was trying to do. But at the same time, I kept thinking about my mom's last few years. She had been a bookkeeper, and then she was a school secretary for a long time. And about 6 months before she got sick, she just up and decided it's time for me to retire. She was 66
before she got sick.
Before she got sick, she called me on a Saturday morning and said, "Guess what I did yesterday?"
Oh, wow, that's great.
I had heard her say, I never thought that she was happy in her job. It was a lot of, complaining, and it never felt fulfilling as a person who was hearing that. And that kept playing in my brain after she passed away. And while there were definitely things about teaching that I love and still love, there was a lot of stress, and I could feel the burnout coming. Part of that stress was my kids were getting older. And as they transitioned out of elementary school, then we were on different schedules. I have a great network of friends that would deliver them to their practices and, events after school, because I was stuck in a different schedule, and I didn't have the ability.
And it's interesting because I know when we spoke and I said, well, what is the catalyst, for change? You had mentioned about your family and wanting
Yeah.
to spend more time with your family. And I just want to share with you something. We have a lot more in common than I even knew before this interview. My mother was diagnosed with cancer in the beginning of 2019, and she passed away 4 months later. And when you talk about the grief and kind of what comes out of that, it's interesting because what came out of it for me was a little bit different for you. And at the same time, we both, at a time in our career, realized our kids were getting older. They needed their mom more, and we weren't there. I quit my corporate job to be able to be with my kids more and, take them to their practices and be a better mom. So I
Mhm.
understand what you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. So a few years ago now, it was 2018, but that was the first year I did a word of the year. And I
Uh-huh.
decided to do be fearless, or fearless was going to be my word, and try to get out of that. 17 days into 2018, I severely damaged my hip. I got an injury and it ended up being on crutches for most of 2018. So that wasn't my best year. But in 2019, when this picture was taken on the Brooklyn Bridge, it was like a big shift. So not only was this the year that I started really looking for a different career that would allow me the flexibility to be with the kids, but we traveled. We are in New York City. We started getting out and being more with each other, and not being so worried about those schedules and things like that. So
Yeah.
I started
And that,
looking.
that
Go
that
ahead.
piece about before it's too late, I think that's where the mom passing and the grief kind of coming in. One thing that I have learned as I interview people about rediscovering their purpose or their passion or making these big shifts or changes, usually there is an event or a circumstance that it's almost like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to do this. And
Mhm.
that's when we have to kind of bundle up the nerve or the boldness to make those significant changes in our life. And it sounds like you did that successfully.
Yeah, it was hard. And I honestly never expected to go from teaching to financial advising. I was looking for research and, administrative positions.
So let's talk about that for a moment, because I think there are a lot of people that are curious. Well, they know that they're not in the right role. There's
Right.
something more out there for them.
Right.
And I know what process I went through to rediscover what I needed to be doing. And I teach this process all the time in workshops and in retreats. But I'm curious, what
Mhm.
was your kind of methodology or your system or process for saying, I think I'm going to be a financial advisor?
Sure. So I had been on LinkedIn for a while, looking for work and things like that. And my firm recruiter called me, the firm I'm with now. And so she called, and I'm like, sure, I'll have a conversation. Like,
Mhm.
open to whatever at this point. I've been looking for about a year. And so I went, and this is pre-pandemic, sat down with who is now my senior advisor, and he started talking about other teachers who have moved into finance. And he gave an example of a teacher who had moved into the career because her son had special needs, and she really wanted to serve families with special needs. And I said, well, I don't have special needs in my family, but as a teacher, I have tons of experience and years of experience working with that population. Why, how can you do this? Like, can you be an advisor for one kind of group? And he was like, oh yeah, you can build your career the way you want to. You can serve whatever community you want to.
Yeah.
And so I started learning more about it. And then I had like a good 2 months to think about it before I really came to that decision. But one of the things that kept coming back to me was why I went into teaching in the first place was because I've always been a helper. In fact, I have problems saying no, probably. I'm a yes person. But helping and volunteering, that has always been where my heart is. And teaching actually didn't allow any time to volunteer. I couldn't even go to my kid's school and be on the PTA because
Yeah. Isn't that something? Yeah, so
So
that one component of just kind of doing some personal reflection and realizing what gives you energy or what gives you
mhm.
joy, and for you to recognize that, then to be able to try and figure out, well, how do I align that to my career path so that I'm being me, and
Mhm.
doing what I love and what I enjoy. I
Mhm.
remember seeing a picture that you sent me, and you probably can
Yep.
relate to this. So this must have something to do with the volunteer passion.
Oh yes, that's definitely. So that's my previous dog. He passed away actually a few weeks before my mom did, about 5 years ago. But we had him for 14 years, and he was a therapy dog. Um, we lived in Germany for a while, and he worked at the army hospital in Germany, and his job was honestly just to make people happy. So these were like wounded soldiers that had come over from mostly Iraq at that time, and we're just kind of in transition. And he, working with him and seeing the effect that he had on people was amazing. And so I kept thinking about all the times I did love to volunteer before teaching. I felt I kind of got bogged down in teaching, um,
Yes.
helping people with medical problems or helping people. And not necessarily, it wasn't me doing it. I was just literally bringing him there and he did his
Mhm.
thing. But like, so helping people find tools or learn what they
Yeah,
need.
what I hear you saying, which may be not what you're saying, but what I hear that you appreciated from the volunteering was the impact that other people received by
Mhm,
you doing that and seeing some results of it. Sure, the volunteer work is important, but it's how it made you feel
mhm,
and knowing that you made a difference. And
mhm.
I completely see that aligned to financial advising for sure. And I think
Exactly.
if I understand correctly, your niche is military families or small businesses. Tell me more about how you kind of picked that niche that was fulfilling for you, that felt more purposeful, let's say.
Exactly. So I didn't have any business experience. I, came little, made almost a 180. So when I first started working with clients, they were the people I knew, and that's military
Mhm.
families because my husband is still active duty, and it's teachers. And what I found was that many teachers actually have a side hustle. And I've kind of known that over the years, but I didn't realize how much they invested in that side hustle, hoping to make it a business one day. So helping a couple of clients turn it into a real business was really thrilling for me and it goes back, it is that
Yeah,
concrete.
I love that. It's
And so
almost
I started with
coaching
that.
now. I mean, I know it's financial advising because you're helping them establish kind of what the future looks like from a financial perspective. But it also seems like a little bit of business coaching.
It is a little bit, but I'm very honest with people that talk to me that want me to help them with their finances because I'm going to be into their finances. It's very personal, and I tell them how long I've been in it, what I used to do, and what my approach is, so that they know. And I work with a team, which was another big pull for me. Teaching can be definitely a silo job. You're in
Mhm.
the classroom all day and support is dependent on administration. And so I really liked the team approach to being in a new career. And I wouldn't have shifted as dramatically as I did if I didn't have a big team behind me. Uh,
Yeah.
and it is, I got everything I wanted, like the flexibility. I can make my schedule around my kids' schedule, but there is that part that feeds me, which is that immediate impact, or the not immediate, but within a few months. Because when you teach a kid, depending on what grade, you might
Mhm.
never know what kind of impact you're
Yeah. And
until.
you're just not sure. I mean, and unfortunately, so much of your success is based on those end of year grades instead of
Exactly.
them coming back 10 years from now and saying what a big impact that you've made on their life. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So having
Now, I wanted to just
ability.
pull out some things that for our audience, because number one, I think you did some personal reflection as you were looking for your next career and making sure that you kind of checked the boxes. You know,
Mhm.
what are the non-negotiables, or what don't I want and what do I want, and kind of making sure that worked. And then the second thing I heard is you made sure that it aligned to your passion, that
Mhm.
that volunteer component you realized was a big part of it, but also aligning it to your tribe, so to speak. You know, the
Mhm.
people that you know based on your experience, whether that's the military families or teachers, because you can relate to them.
Mhm.
And it
Mhm.
certainly, makes the environment easier. And then the third thing I heard is one of the things that you knew you would thrive in an environment where you worked with a team.
Mhm.
So I like all of that as kind of a little bit of a roadmap for people that are considering jumping, or, quitting their job and trying something new. Uh,
Mhm.
One of the things that I learned about you just by some of the pictures that you sent me is that you've got to be pretty smart. Okay. You're standing beside Alex Trebek. I mean, what's the story here?
Well, I have a lot of useless knowledge in my brain. That's what gets you on that show. But so I pointed out to you in our early conversation that these two pictures I kind of think of as being connected because they have the same theme. So whenever I was considering making a big jump career-wise, I kept reminding myself that I can do hard things. In fact, the picture of me and Alex Trebek is on my vision board as that reminder. So I first tried out for Jeopardy in 2001, which was you had to go to a hotel and do paper pencil. And then I did it two more times over then I started having kids, and then I did it again when it turned to an online test. So to get past that round, you have to get 38 out of 50 questions right. And so I don't know what my score was, but at some point I got them right.
Yeah, that's great.
And it was in 2010 that they called. I had an audition in Raleigh in 2010. And they said, okay, we can call you in the next 18 months if we want you to be on the show. They called me 13 months later.
Wow.
And I was literally sitting in my car with my young kids when they called me. And so it was an amazing experience. No, I did not win, but I got second. So I was very happy.
You
And
got
was
second. I mean, that's an exciting story. So when you received that phone call, did you think it was like not real?
they I can't remember what they said, but they do some sort of phrasing to assure you that it is the real deal
The
because
real deal.
I wasn't thinking about it anymore. I was a mom with two young girls and my days were consumed by that. So it was almost like, who's calling me from California?
Hmm.
Yeah. So it was pretty amazing. I still am friends with the people I met that week. We still keep in touch. We call it our Jeopardy versary every September.
Oh, that's funny.
Shows aired. So
So
yeah,
you do hard things.
I
What
can
are
do
you
more things.
doing on the left?
So going back to that fear thing that I had, I even when I was growing up, was extremely afraid of heights, no roller coasters, nothing that even remotely looked like a daredevil thing. Even as a kid on the playground, if the bridge in the play set moved, I was not going to be on that. And so after I had surgery on my hip and got better. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do that over again because I couldn't really be fearless when I was on crutches. But I had the opportunity to go to Switzerland with a school trip with my daughter. And one of the things on the itinerary was zip lining. And I'm like, wow, that is like a culmination of all these fears. And you're in the Alps. Um,
Sure.
so I was so nervous. I was probably I can't remember another time I was at that nervous because especially when we got there and I see how high it is and next thing I know, I am in heaven. I mean, it was so much fun. And a friend of mine took this picture, one of the other chaperones, and I said that's the picture to show that I can do that. And not in my daughter's doing it for hours, and I did it for an hour and considered it a victory. But that getting past the fear that it was all in my head. And it was about 6 months after this that I got the call from my firm. And I really think if I had not started pushing myself in other areas before that call to be willing to be out there and try new things and actually just to be uncomfortable.
Hmm.
I would not have taken on something that I really like what I do.
Yeah. And
Um,
I often hear that there's that point of knowing that you're going to be uncomfortable,
mhm.
and accepting that is actually kind of the precursor to making that shift.
Yeah.
And I could see that in your story.
I heard a podcast several months ago now, but the quote that stuck with me was, "It is brave to be uncomfortable." And I stuck that on my wall by my
It
vision.
is brave to be uncomfortable. I love that.
Teaching was comfortable, but I was not happy. There's a lot you can't control as a teacher, and schedule being one of them. How much time I spend with my kids, and even I remind myself of that because this is a hard career. It's not an easy career. I have taken more tests in the past year than I've ever taken. And it takes a long time to get started and feel like, okay, this is, I've made it now. I'm good. But on those days, I just remind myself, like, I'm not growing unless I am uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be doing the right thing. Maybe that day was hard or that conversation was hard, but I still feel more fulfilled and satisfied at the end of the day than when I would come drag myself home from teaching and try to.
And so often too, I think that, well, personally, boredom for me or complacency is evil. I can't live with that. And I have to be doing something more adventurous or something new and fresh. And I also believe that continuing to learn, develop, and grow is an essential part of just life, right? And when we get complacent or we get stuck, that's when depression can set in, or just not being happy. Your mindset shifts, negativity.
Mm-hmm.
So I love it that you discovered that you were fearful, but you just went for it. You knew you were going to be uncomfortable, but you saw the light at the end.
Yes. And I've learned a lot, so much about myself since I did switch careers. But one of them is that the fear doesn't have to go away. I don't have to push it away. It's okay that it's there.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it make me, try harder, try something new, whatever it is, it helps me grow.
Yes.
And so every time I get on an airplane, there's a little bit of, and then I'm like, okay, I guess we're going on this airplane trip together, fear.
Yeah, right.
But it's there, and
I zip-lined in the Swiss Alps. I can do this.
That's right. It can help me and not be something that I'm trying to push away all the time. Something.
Well, what would you say, maybe just advice to anyone that might be looking for a career or a career choice? We did a show 2 weeks ago where I was interviewing some ladies that are kind of at their end of their career, and they're at a stage in life where it's like, well, I want to create my third phase or whatever, my final performance, so to speak. And they're in retirement, but yet they're still trying to discover there's something else left. And what else can I do with all of my experience and with my God-given talents? And how can I wrap this all together and, live with more purpose and passion? So at different stages of life, I think that question pops up. Is there any advice that you would give to how to rediscover it?
I would say to ask that question to your tribe. Tell your people what you're thinking of, because you don't know who you're talking to, really. It might open up something that you never thought of, because your tribe, your family, your friends, and even I would say now today, my coworkers, they have your back. And so that if a phrase I heard in my particular industry was, people get out of this industry because either lack of money, they're not making money as fast as they want to, or lack of support. And so if you have that support in place and people understand, what your passion is, or hey, I'm trying to figure out my passion, they understand your phase that you're in.
Sure.
Then you can do anything, I think. Yeah.
It's interesting you offered that. Last week I was talking about discovering your superpower to figure out your purpose. and was asking people to ask friends, family, colleagues, what's my superpower? And what other people say, usually there's a common theme. And if you can figure out how to, take that and put it into your everyday life, naturally you're going to feel more purposeful and have more meaning and joy.
Yeah. I have a great example of that. So a friend of mine was sharing with me her passion, and she said, I've never said this out loud before. So she's an empty nester. She's kind of looking for that next phase thing. She said, I've always wanted to work with horses and like horse therapy and helping people. And I was like, oh, okay. I listened and I acknowledged. Like, great. Not 10 days later, a great friend of mine called me and said, so I'm finally doing it. I'm starting my nonprofit for equine therapy. I need a board. Wow. And I was like, oh my goodness,
I have the person. Yeah.
The universe is speaking to you right now. But it was like, she had never said that. And it was within 10 days that something opened up and gave her that opportunity. So I think we kind of keep things in our brain like, oh, that's a silly idea, or I can never make that into a career or a job, but if it really speaks to you, it needs to be spoken out, I think.
I agree. Yeah. And we were talking earlier too about vision boards. I've got mine in the back here, and I know that you've done your word of the year, and we've talked about doing some work with some of the veteran families. And I just think that so often we just need to take a break, take a breather, and spend some time on us and really reflect and do the different journaling or exercises, and with the support of others. That's why I like the retreat format that I was telling you about, to get to that mindset, get to that understanding. It's not something that just comes easily for everyone.
Yeah. And everybody comes at it at a different way. But I will say this, my first day in an office with my current job, we were asked to craft our own vision statement. And that almost like sealed everything for me. It's like, wait a minute, you actually care why I'm here.
Yeah.
And so it was a need that I didn't realize existed, of where do you want to be, that you are seen and cared about in such a way that you are, allowed to be creative and be, the business person you want, if that's what it is. And it was very empowering for me to think that, like, because it's more than just, okay, I want to make X amount of money or this. I started with going, I want to spend more time with my kids, and go from there. It doesn't have to be, I need to get this degree by that date or this certificate. It is what is going to fulfill you. I mean, you're going to have rough days, as we all do, but what's going to.
Yeah. And it sounds like you had the flexibility in this particular career path to create your own business around your desires and your wants and your needs. And, that was an ideal alignment for you, for your, for your career choice. And it sounds like a great company.
It is. And some people ask me that knew I was a teacher for a long time. They're like, but you didn't teach math.
I know. I was thinking you must be a numbers girl.
Nope, I am not. And that was surprising thing, is that, until they called me and I actually spoke to them, it's more about relationships and helping people learn about their and I was like, oh, it's teaching.
Yeah, it is teaching at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it was still the same.
I pulled a couple things here because I wanted to make sure that those that are listening, if they're more curious about what your focus areas are or what you're doing, I pulled some things from Facebook and LinkedIn, I think, or maybe your website. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about the best way to reach out to you or get in touch with you?
Yep. So there's some contact info there. So there is my email is probably the easiest, because that's something I can do when I'm at my daughter's swim practice, which I enjoy, taking her to now. Messages on Facebook are also, I usually get those very quickly as well. And also text is fine for that number. And yeah, I do different levels as an initial consult. So some people are like, I just have a couple questions. And I do like, okay, well, we'll just set aside 15 minutes. It's not a big, once somebody really comes on board and we agree to work together as a client, of course, it's a longer process, but I usually just start with a 15-minute. You can just reach out to me that way, and we can get on each other's calendars.
That sounds great. And just to make sure I'm leaving a clear message, you don't have to be a teacher or a military family to reach out to you.
No, I work with small business owners too, and I also work with families who are not affiliated with the military. I am working on my special needs designation, which I first heard about a year ago. I can work with special needs families as well as I'm working toward that certificate. But I am very open and honest with my clients or potential clients. If it's not my area of expertise, I let them know that, and let them know how we work with people. For example, taxes are not my favorite thing to talk about,
Mm-hmm.
but one of my senior partners, he could talk about taxes all day. He loves to do stuff like that. So like I bring him in when it's somebody that wants to learn about taxes. We have a team actually of military affiliated advisors that we kind of work together to work with people because we have a spouse, a retired person, like everybody's connected to the military. And I also love to teach people. I mean, I still do. I do classes. So if a group or even a family just wants a class, quick, I do money tips or money mistakes and things like that. And those are all just part of that volunteerism that I still have in me and love to give back to. So
that's great. I'm glad you've incorporated that into your current business. Makes sense.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I just want to thank you for, for joining me today. It was fun because we hadn't really shared the stories yet. So I got to interview you legitimately without any, pre-questions or any pre-notions. So, and I appreciate you sharing your story. I think it is inspirational for those that are thinking about, well, gosh, what can I do different? And how can I just make it happen? And rediscover who you're meant to be and what are some other avenues that you can take, to be more fulfilled in life. So thank you very much. And I just want to share with the audience that you can find this recording on the Krista Moore Show website link to YouTube or on the Krista Moore Facebook page. And we hope that you find it and share it with others. And just want to say thank you very much, Lindsay, and take care. All right.
You too, Krista. Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm.